As far as the prototypical serial killer goes, there haven't been too many in recent memory. Thankfully, no new names like Ted Bundy, Jeffrey Dahmer, or Gary Ridgway have been thrust into celebrity status due to their sick and twisted behavior over an extended period of time. However, there was one individual whose story likely would have gotten much more media coverage if it wasn't for the fact that his crimes culminated just as the COVID-19 pandemic kicked off in the United States. The man's name was Kenyel Brown, and despite multiple parole violations and a long history of criminal activity, he was repeatedly released back into society, and ultimately, it cost 6 innocent people their lives. Unlike the previous examples, he didn't kill out of some sick sexual perversion. Instead, he just completely snapped and went on a robbery and murder spree in a desperate and psychotic attempt to fund his drug addiction.
Timothy McVeigh was arrested by local authorities.
What's the guardrail? At the end of the guardrail,
it was like a black hole. It was like a crack, and everything that fell into that crack just disappeared.
Kenyel William Brown was born in River Rouge, Michigan on July 3, 1979, into a very large family. He attended River Rouge High School, where he became the star player on the basketball team. He began his criminal career shortly after turning 18, when in August of 1997, he was arrested for attacking a person with a weapon. He spent a few months locked up at the Wayne County Jail, but was released in early 1998, then arrested again for carrying illegal weapons. Charges of resisting arrest were also added. Despite a 4-year prison sentence, he was released in about a year, and the arrests continued for Brown. In October of '99, he was booked for possession or sale of a taser weapon. It was around this time he first began to work with investigators, agreeing to cooperate and testify against other potential criminals in exchange for a lesser charge and no prison time. He was released, and in September of 2000 was arrested on possession of drugs with intent to sell. He had a wealth of information on other ongoing crimes, however, and exchanged that knowledge once again in order to avoid jail time. He finally did some serious prison time starting in 2001 after he was involved in a car accident in which one person was killed and another injured. Brown was at fault for the accident, but he attempted to flee the scene. Police found him and arrested him on a multitude of charges, including driving without a license and possession of an illegal weapon. He spent nearly a decade in prison, but was released on parole in 2010. His rap sheet continued to expand in 2014 when he was arrested for possession of illegal weapons. He was facing life in prison but was recruited by the Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, Firearms, and Explosives to work as an informant. The deals he cut allowed him to be out on the street again by February of 2017, and he quickly violated the terms of his parole, but the agency he was working with intervened to make sure he could stay out of prison. His position as an informant allowed him to stay out of prison even as he continued to violate parole time and time again. He tested positive for drug use. He missed required therapy sessions. He even drove drunk. Brown was never sent back to jail for any significant amount of time. Eventually, he was sent to a drug rehab clinic, but shortly after being released from treatment, was pulled over for DUI. At his court hearing, he was facing a certain prison sentence for violating parole multiple times after being given so many chances. But a Detroit police officer working for a federal task force asked U.S. District Judge Bernard Friedman to release Brown, giving no specific reason why. The judge granted his request. "I know you have an alcohol problem," the judge said to Brown, "and I know some other things are going on in your life right now, which I appreciate, and it's the right thing to do. And as a result of that, I'm going to give you a break. I'm going to discharge you from probation, not give you any other time, because I think hopefully you can stay out of trouble. And I think you're doing some of the right things too, and I appreciate that. And I think you are entitled to a break for that. So stay out of trouble, and I don't want to see you again, okay?" Brown replied, "Thank you, Judge." So after multiple parole violations, culminating in a DUI, Kenyel Brown was freed once again. The officer immediately brought in Brown, who must have had quite a reputation as a federal informant, to work with the Detroit Police Department. They not only got Brown off the hook for DUI and parole violation, but paid him $150 to provide information about drug and gang activity in Southwest Detroit. The information he provided was of little help to the police, and later they claimed that they had no idea that Brown violated parole so many times.
What I'm getting now preliminarily is that our DPD officer assigned to that task force was unaware of these failures or violations of his release. Unaware. Again, had we known, this is not a person we would have wanted to use.
But according to defense attorney and former federal prosecutor Keith Corbett, they had to know he was involved in a lot of criminal activity in order to have any reason to expect that he would be a decent informant. Corbett also explained how oftentimes law enforcement will get a defendant off the hook so they can go out on the streets and make contact with other known criminals in order to get the information they need. But even Corbett had to admit, no one expected Brown to go off the rails like he did. After that final court appearance, he went on an absolute reign of terror, and it started on December 7th, 2019, when he shot and killed 31-year-old Lauren Haddington in River Rouge. The following month, January of 2020, at around 9:55 p.m., during an argument, Brown shot and killed two people, 48-year-old Dorian Patterson and 52-year-old Kimberly Green. He also shot 44-year-old Clifton Smith in the torso, but Smith survived, was able to escape the house and flag down a local police officer. After multiple surgeries, he confirmed the shooter was Kenyel Brown. Brown was placed on the Detroit Most Wanted list with a $10,000 reward for information leading to his arrest, but the killing spree continued. In February of 2020, he attempted to rob 49-year-old Garcias Woodyard, and when Woodyard resisted, Brown shot and killed him. Just 2 days later, 41-year-old father of two, Amir Thaxton, an acquaintance of Brown, was working late as a graphic artist at Next Level Custom Apparel in East Detroit. Brown entered the store and shot Thaxton dead before stealing his money, belongings, and car. Their murder count was now up to 5. And a couple days later, Brown made another killing, murdering a 36-year-old father of 5, Eugene Jennings, while trying to steal his car. Jennings was a beloved individual, and more than 100 people gathered outside the vacant home where his body was discovered to hold a candlelight vigil.
He was always there for me when I was in need, always.
On February 24th, 2020, Brown was spotted at an adult bookstore, and the police were notified. When Brown saw the police, he took off, running through houses, jumping fences, and trying to escape. Soon he was in a backyard with nowhere to run, surrounded by police. He removed a firearm and shot himself in the head. Brown did not immediately die, but he never regained consciousness. He took his final breath on February 28th, 4 days later. The COVID-19 pandemic would take over the news in the coming days, and the story never really made national headlines. However, this individual, although clearly different from the stereotypical serial killer, murdered 6 innocent people over a period of nearly 3 months. He was prolific enough to get a nickname, the Metro Detroit Serial Killer. It is a wild, interesting, and tragic case in that while he was clearly a career criminal with a drug problem, there was no evidence that he intentionally murdered anyone until suddenly he went on a murderous rampage starting in 2019 at 40 years of age. One of the biggest factors in all of it was the failure of the justice system to do anything about a problem, a potential menace to society who continuously committed crime after crime. But they would let him go, hoping he could help them capture other criminals.
Did they know where he was at all times? Did they know who he was associating with? Did they know what he was doing? If they knew all of these things, if he's working for you, why did my son get killed?
As it turned out, those other criminals were nowhere near as psychotic as the one that they were keeping on the streets. I hope you enjoyed today's video on a modern serial killer who took the lives of 6 innocent people after over 20 years of committing crimes and being continuously set free. If you enjoyed the video, check out another by clicking one of the links above. Have a wonderful day, and we'll talk to you in the next one.